Excellent. So I thought, so we could get as many questions in here as possible. If each of us on the panel took about 10 minutes, no longer, and just told our story, that would leave a good 30 minutes for open questions. So if you can write your questions down, just hold them and ask after the three of us present. I think it preserves the most time for questioning. And I'll go real top level and as quick as I can with our story. You know, a lot of what I'm going to say is of the obvious, but it just frames this issue of whether to go nonprofit or not and how to do it as one strategy of survival. So we all know that the previous market-based private news model is broken, needs to be replaced. There's a lot of options to do that. Converting to nonprofit's only one of those options. But they all have to meet certain criteria or tests that we're finding out in our fast changing industry. And you don't have to check every box, but you probably should. And number one is local ownership or local presence. That's key. That's local. We need to change our footing and placement in the community. We need to operate as a community institution and not a private for-profit or shareholder company, because we're going to go out and ask for support. We need additional and new revenue sources because we're losing the legacy advertising money. And when you convert to nonprofit, those revenue sources open up opportunities around philanthropy and grants. And hosted events. You don't need to be a nonprofit to do that, but the grants and philanthropy are just a must from what I'm seeing, all the best practices out there. There's still a little bit of time, depending on your local market, to hold on to some of that revenue in advertising, print plus digital. But we know what the trend is there, so we need to grow reader revenue and we need to grow philanthropy to replace the dying ad dollars. So our quick story, we're in Sonoma West Publishers is in Northern California. We're in Sonoma County, the wine country. We're under heavy smoke and we're fighting wildfires right now. We're covering wildfires. Some of my staff is evacuated at this moment. We have a lot of practice at that, unfortunately, for 4 years now. But our newspapers are legacy papers. Our oldest paper is 156 years old. We saw the model breaking down in 2016, and we've been working to go rapidly digital first over all that time. In 2018, we weren't quite ready. I wasn't convinced to do a nonprofit, so we did a direct public offer instead. That's a technical term you might not be familiar with, but we raised $400,000 from our readers and community folks. That turned out to be an excellent bridge to converting to this new, more long-term sustainable model of the nonprofit model, because out of the 147 people that contributed $400,000 to us, we found our future board of directors for the nonprofit. And we found who was most willing and able to support us with extra dollars. Through that effort. So we knew we were in a good place, in a good community, where going out, doing the ask for community support, that we had a real viable opportunity. I mean, there might be some communities that don't have that opportunity. I don't know, but our communities have a real strong identity, self-identity. So we incorporated the nonprofit Sonoma County Local News Initiative in December of 2019. We filed for our IRS 501c3 status on January 24 of this year. We're still pending approval from the IRS, but we have a fiscal agent. So we're able to accept tax deductible donations, and we've been accepting those since January. They're not a lot yet because of the social distancing, and we're shut down. It's hard to do a lot of asking. We can't convene large groups to hold nice community sessions, et cetera. But we're on a good path, and we have a very strong board. Having that DPO at first allowed us to build in a lot of ramp time over a year plus to figure out the structure we wanted to do, and that building in ramp time to do such a major conversion is really important. We found out kind of midstream, we found it out, but we kind of got lucky because we did do the DPO first. Our nonprofit has a three-pointed mission. It's to sustain local news, encourage civic engagement, and expand media literacy. So we're not doing a direct conversion of our for-profit corporation to a nonprofit. The two corporations are running side by side right now, and because the nonprofit has a larger mission than just putting out the weekly or the daily news. For instance, we've just launched a student journalism project at 5 local high schools with donated funding. So we have a lot of initiatives like that. So it's real key that we're converting to the footing of operating like a public trust. We're not, when people give us money, they're not giving it to me and my wife, who are the owners of Sonoma West Publishers. They're giving it to this new nonprofit, which is operating as a public trust. We have declared ourselves as a community institution equal to the local schools, the library, the museum, the community hospital. We're equal among those. And in some places, we're more essential than those because we actually tell the stories of those local nonprofits. And without us, their message wouldn't be getting delivered to the community. And that's resonating. We're getting a lot of support for that. Real quick, key points. My mantra is only a community can save its own newspaper. If there's not willingness there, then publishers go somewhere else. If they're not there, they're not interested. If there's something that's broken down, ultimately only a community can save its own newspaper. I found some good tools along the way. The Institute of Nonprofit News is an outstanding, excellent resource. There's almost everything you need in a toolbox is at that website, and we're pending members. We have to get our full nonprofit status, and then we're a member. But we've been able to get a lot of counsel and advice from them along the way. And Sue Cross, the executive director there, and others are quite open and for all kinds of inquiries, et cetera. Networking with organizations like the National Newspaper Association, your state association. I mean, you should get really well known out there. I'm first name basis with Cal Matters, the network in California, with the Knight Foundation and others. I'm a squeaky wheel, and I've gotten a lot of support and made a lot of contacts throughout the industry. And also Gary, Ice Wine too, I'm a member of that, International Society of Weekly News Editors. The legal cost for us was, I could break it down 2 ways. It either cost us $6,000 or $10,000 in structural legal fees and application fees, et cetera. It depends on what the local lawyer's hourly rate is in your community. It depends on how much you're going to pay. Our rate here is $4.50 an hour. So let's divide that by however many hours. That's what it costs to do that. I have other points, but let me stop there. And I see Joe on the screen right below me. So why don't I pass it to Joe?
Thanks, Val. You said a lot of great points and a lot of echo over here. Kaya, a lot of things is.
Oh, you're
slightly,
cutting out.
I am. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
You're cutting it. Is anybody else hearing that?
Yes.
Yeah, you're just cutting kind of in and out.
Okay, sorry. Just waiting a second for my internet to stabilize maybe. I'm really close to the router too, but our situation's a bit different. In March of this year, our company folded completely. We had 15 community newspapers across the country. Mostly 14 of them are in Chicagoland, northern and southern suburbs of Chicago. Am I bouncing in and out, or am I good now?
Good.
Excellent. Excellent. So, we've been toying the line. I was an executive at that company, was a publisher, basically the top editor, the editor-in-chief for a decade. And looking at the bottom line for years, we were just skating by on thin margins, but we were doing okay. We felt great about the impact we were making. And as long as we weren't falling too below in the red, we, our owners were gracious enough to let us keep going. So, but when you rely so much on advertising, like Rollie was talking about, 95% of our revenue was that, and the rest of it was from subscriptions. But when that fell in the tank completely in March, we lost 90% of that 90%. The owners decided it wasn't worth the effort to put as much money as it would take, especially with the uncertain circumstances. So we folded entirely. 50 employees full-time lost their jobs, 25 of which were journalists, and for another few dozen were part-timers that this was their main source of income. So it was tough. But I had been looking at, and some of my colleagues, nonprofit for a little bit. It's I don't want to call it a trend because it's more substantial than that, but in Chicagoland, there were a few outlets, a few legacy ones. Chicago Reader, for instance, just finished their nonprofit switch. And a company called Block Club Chicago, which was from DNA Info, which was in New York and Chicago, switched over as well. So we had a couple paths laid out for us, and I was really charmed by the overall integrity built platform of a nonprofit. As a community news organization, I felt so much of our work was a service to the community, if not all of our work. So I felt akin to a lot of nonprofits and their mission. So mission-based platform was really important. And then add in that you can build a more sustainable model, or it's an idea to get there with, as Rollie mentioned, donations. We have a subscription model as well. Community partnerships. You can do aggregation partnerships. There's just a lot more, the term we kept hearing was revenue promiscuity. So that's what we kind of built our platform on, a few different ways of funding to get up and running and off the ground, and then subscriptions and events to keep us in the air for the long haul and sustain. And that's our model. So we had to do it quickly because we really felt like we abandoned our readers at a really important and uncertain time and crucial time for reliable, credible news, which is what we were providing. And they didn't have any, we basically turned them into deserts by leaving news deserts. So 3 of us built up, went through all the paperwork, did it all ourselves, followed a path, like I said, very lucky by the Block Club Chicago, and the INN was a huge help, the Institute for Nonprofit News. We hooked up with them very quickly. And we built our platform and we built our company. And what we did differently was we did crowdfunding. We did going to the community, very similar, but we just needed a nest egg to get going, to start paying some of our people. So we did Kickstarter.com, which is kind of a sense of urgency platform because you have to hit your number to collect the funds. So we set it at just $50,000. We figured we could get going with that, and we had some funding on the back end coming from some corporate sponsorships, and hopefully we applied for a lot of grants too and family foundations. So those are in the works, and we achieved that in a month, and that was at the beginning of August, and we launched yesterday. So if I'm talking fast, it's because I might have some adrenaline going from the week that it's been, but it was a successful launch. The support from the community, as Rollie mentioned, is the key to this entire thing. If they hadn't been so vocal about when we shuttered in March about wanting us back and where are we going, when are we coming back, personal emails and texts, as well as trying to reach out to us on social media, I don't know if we would have been as energized to get going. So that was really important to us. Plus having 2 colleagues, 2 co-founders who were 100% on board and wanted to get back into it, and not just because they needed a job, which of course is part of it, but they wanted to serve the community. They wanted to act as a community institution and deliver reliable news. So we did it, and we're up and running, and we've got news all the time, and it feels good.
Okay, Catherine, you ready?
Yeah. A ditto to a lot of everything you said. Rollie mentioned early on in his presentation that the business model of what we do has been broken for many years now and was not sustainable. And so you have to act quickly and decisively or you're out of business. So let me tell you what we did here and give you a little background. Is that it was, our papers are the Fauquier Times and Prince William Times. We serve Fauquier County and Prince William County. We are weekly and we are long established. We, in 2016, the owner of a bigger chain of newspapers that included Loudoun County decided to sell off a few of his properties. It attracted many investors and a group was put together and these investors were very deep-rooted in the communities. They had lived here and worked here all their lives and raised enough money to buy the publications and probably was undercapitalized because when you branch off like that, you don't know what the expense levels are going to be, and you know, get it up and running in a very different way. Then, you know, so it was failing. It was not doing well. And again, the investors wanted to keep going, but there was no ROI to be seen. And it just was not working. So last year we started to take a different approach, and that's when we decided to go to 501(c). It was an easier process than I thought. We created an entire different board. We now are owned by Piedmont Journalism Foundation, and the goal for Piedmont Journalism Foundation is strictly great journalism. And again, they have lived here, they have worked here, they have grown their businesses here, and it was important for them. We're the only newspaper in both our communities, and they did not want to have a desert of news. You know, the local news is so critical to the people we serve. Most of our subscribers have subscribed for, you know, over 50 years. And we didn't want to become a desert community. So I would say it was a rough start in the beginning, but now we have just won the Virginia sweeps in all categories, and we have for the last 3 years, which has made us more visible to people who are willing to donate. We did multiple things. We launched if you go on our website, fauquier.com, we started to say, you know, support local journalism, and would walk through everybody who donated the contribution they were making to be able to continue to bring the news to them directly. And that was very successful. So we have a kind of an approach that is all-inclusive. We also made a bold move and locked down our website, and you know, where we offer the paper plus our website, which is a pretty comprehensive website, and we're trying to reach everybody who either prefers to have the newspaper delivered or read it online. We have a digital edition also, and all of them have been pretty successful because of, you know, the one thing that stands out is, you know, none of this would mean anything. It wouldn't mean anything unless we had really good journalism. And you know, what's interesting is even to this day, yesterday that is, somebody said, "Send one of your reporters over," and I said, "I only have one reporter." And they didn't understand. They go, "What? You're putting out a paper like that and you only have one reporter?" I said, yes, that's true. One reporter and a great editor. They work 24/7. They have the finger of the pulse of the community, and are doing just a stellar job. So I think people are more, inclined to contribute. And so what we've also seen is on our subscription drive, we are also have a donation section, and we're finding that people are donating. They're taking out a subscription and also donating money at the same time, and it's coming in incrementally. So all that really says is that how what a need we fill in the communities we serve. I just think that we've also received multiple grants in the beginning of this year, given, and they are citing that it is 100% local. We cover the courts, we cover every community function, and who else would do it if we didn't do it? And this community is really rich in people who believe in transparency. They want the information. We are clearly not fake news. We clearly support community efforts 100% of the time. So really pleased to say it has worked out pretty well with us. And I think this year, of course, it's challenging to everybody, losing revenues at 50%. We have, like you were saying, Rollie, we still operate as Piedmont Journalism, Piedmont Media, LLC on the commercial part of our company. And so those revenues are still necessary to keep everything going. And people get confused about that. And I always say it's just, if you look at a couple of different models that have a nonprofit and then a commercial division, it's pretty similar. And so we still have to meet our obligations on payroll, et cetera. But again, it's been pretty easy. And I go back to it's easy because of the journalism that we are spinning out. We just got huge accolades for our recent coverage of the politics that are going on in our words in each one of our communities. So, I think if you can take the time and, take a look at the model you have and meet the criteria, I think it's becoming easier to meet the criteria as long as your position statement is strong and you're clear on your objectives. And again, there are so many foundations that are willing to support the efforts that we do because of the integrity you have in reporting. So I mean, I'm going to cut to the chase. I don't have a lot to talk about other than it was the right move at the right time. This year has been difficult on everybody, and especially our industry, but this is a way that people can contribute that is keeping us afloat. And I see it getting better with every month moving forward. So I would encourage everybody to take a look at a new model. So question time.
So Lynn, are you moderating questions?
Yeah, so Joe, Rollie, Catherine, do you have anything else to add? Or otherwise we'll just open up the floor for questions.
Just one thing occurred listening to Catherine. News publishers and newspaper people have been notorious in not representing and marketing their story and what they do. Right. Now there's an urgency to it. When we did our launch and we had to go out and explain ourselves and start doing the ask, we had to tell our story, and we had to tell, and we educated the community on how much it costs to do news.
They have no idea.
They have no idea. They thought we were very successful, and they see the car, the beat up truck I drive around in. That ought to give them a clue right there. But we went to full transparency. We put our reporters' salaries in front of people.
Yeah, we did the same.
And they were shocked. you know, because we're not able to pay a living wage, and it's Sonoma County is one of the most expensive places to live in this country. We're in wine country, so it's doubly troublesome. But you know, so when you do this conversion to a new business model, it just gives you a great opportunity to tell your whole story like we haven't been doing in the past. So
we actually had a story written. In fact, it happened in the middle of March, right when everything happened with the pandemic, and just really told our story. And yeah. I think it went a long way. People really have no idea. It's just like I said yesterday, somebody said, send one of your reporters over. And I go, let me get Coy. He's on 4 other stories right now. They just don't. I think if you educate them, and you're right, we don't talk about ourselves. We're humble. We don't want to be the story. And I feel like that worked against us for a while. And I think we have to let people understand, the cost of driving one paper 18 miles one way and 18 miles back for one paper. We already lost money. Yeah. And by the way, the other thing that we did is that we went to mail. We have 4,000 paid subscribers in one of our publications and could not afford the cost. And we went to and got a permit to go in mail, and that saved us over $80,000 a year. So you have to look at every aspect of this.
Questions?
Just go ahead and unmute yourself and speak when you're ready.
Yeah, I had one, Catherine. That's Tonda.
Hey, Tonda.
Can you elaborate a little bit on which activities you kept in the LLC? What are you doing on that side of the house?
On the LLC, it's still business as usual. We still are driving retail revenue. We have a robust legal revenue that still continues, and circulation revenue. So it pretty much acts as the same way. And we can't take donations for Piedmont Journalism Foundation when they contribute, because we have all this activity going on. If you go on our website, you'll see there are multiple ways to donate. What we have to do is any donation is turned over to the foundation. And so it works the same. It feels the same to me, except that I can sleep at night now. And last year I did not at all.
So you basically
we also had a really big, we had to take a look at our expenses, and with the pandemic, we had to cut several positions. We cut our sports editor because there are no sports. We cut our community editor because there are no community activities. And we also went to just news whole only, which is a concept that we implemented right away, which means we're going to focus only on the news that is critical to these communities. Because we were off 50% on revenue, and it's paid off. We've done a good job with expense reduction. We are going to slowly reintroduce, repopulate our office, and our advertisers are starting to come back, and we created a business relief program for them that would help them get back on their feet. So it's a little bit of everything. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. From the LLC side, then, are you contributing anything from those revenues into the C3?
It's just the operation. So the LLC just pays for the rent and salaries and anything to do with the operation. No, we do not give any money to them. They give money to us. For instance, we did a couple of centerpiece stories that that we asked them to. They asked us to do, and they send them, and then they pay for it. So it's more about, if I have to go up in page count for a story, whether it's Mosby Heritage or whatever story that makes sense, or broadband that we can't afford to do, they will pay for that because it's consistent with their charter.
Thank you.
Becky?
Yeah, 3 years ago, when 3.5 almost, we hit a rail, and we had tried by that time many things to, as a regular for-profit newspaper, to just keep ourselves above the water. One of the things we considered was nonprofit, but we didn't consider it very long, and maybe you can talk me out of it. The reason we did not consider it was because we're in a small 5,000 person extended community. It's a tourist community. We have a lot of realtors. We have, at that time, we had 9 local public agencies that nobody monitored but us. Now we're down to 7 local public agencies. We're still, nobody monitors but us. The problem was, as we saw it, that nonprofits have boards of directors. And those boards of directors would come, those directors would come from our community. And there are factions in our community: the realtors, the 4 water districts,
Fire department.
Yeah, fire department, and the fire department, who would love to get that board controlled by their either commissioners or directors or former commissioners and directors, so that they could control the editorial content. And essentially, we felt, wipe out our watchdog capability against the local public agencies that seem all too willing to stretch things, and more than stretch things. So we thought, with a board of directors that is might control the editorial content, we couldn't do that. Now maybe
well, you've got to, can I tell you that, I worked with the board here when I first came here, and I had a big board, and, they overwhelmed me because they were all over the place. You're taking counsel and recommendations from a board of 14 or whatever it was at the time.
Yeah.
And I learned how to work with them. But I think that, and now I have the PJF board, and, the board couldn't be any better because Bo Jones is from the Washington Post, retired. And we have people that are newspaper people. And so, and so they kind of get it, and they leave me alone. And, they're saying, we understand you're going to, publish the type of publication we would, and so you have to pick the right board. And I understand what you're talking about, because it's hard for you. Where are you?
We're in the mountains in Southern California. We're above Palm Springs, but we're about an hour drive from Palm Springs. And with a lot of realtors. I'll give you an example.
I understand realtors, so.
Yeah, we got a letter from the Realtors Association one time. The only letter to the editor in the paper that week. And it asked us if we would please put all of the bad news in the back half of the paper.
Oh, I've had that kind of request.
Thank you.
So that the tourists who came here, who might be interested in purchasing property here, would not see the bad.
Well, I think I want to try to talk you, into it, because I think there might be a way, and maybe we can take this offline, and you can give me a call. Okay. I think that if you you find the right people, I think you can. How many publications are you competing with?
Nobody.
Nobody.
Not in our little community.
Okay. So I think you can find the right board. I think you can find the right board.
Yeah, I think, I had the same hesitancy 2 years ago, and that's why we did the direct public offer. I didn't want to do the nonprofit for the same concerns you raised. But I'm 180 degrees turned on this now, because I think the nonprofit operating as a community institution and the public trust gives you much better footing in the community. And you have to rely on a few things. And first and foremost is radical transparency. The nonprofit does everything out in the open, total transparency.
Absolutely.
Then if someone's trying to meddle with something or pull sway, it's exposed right away. And I'm sorry, you have to trust the public to come up with the best solution. We're a democracy. We're teetering. I get that, but locally we're fine. And I have that issue. But on my board, I mean, we're working through some of these birthing pains, and I start my board meeting. I'm not even on the board. They kicked me off the board of my nonprofit. I'm an advisory member.
Now you're making a point for me.
He thinks he's
no.
fire us. We're gonna get fired first thing.
Well, I'm not. No, I'm the hired publisher. I have a job, and here's the deal. Only journalists make journalism decisions.
Absolutely.
And you don't cross that line.
I just put.
Well, you said something interesting. The person I was talking to, I didn't catch his name, is that you're the watchdog. And as long as you are committed to the person, you're the watchdog of the community. There is integrity in that. And you don't have to compromise it. I've been bullied by different categories of advertisers for a long time. And they don't always appreciate what we write, but there's integrity in what we do. And I fully believe, and I think in our community specifically, this board may have different views, but they understand the importance of journalism and being the watchdog and serving the community. Because, I'll steal the phrase from Washington Post, is democracy dies in darkness. And I think, we don't do a good job about, standing our position and making it clear that we work in their best interest. So I'm going to encourage you. I'm going to, take a look at your business model. It's a tough road. And there are, if you don't go that way, then you may have to take a look at your model and figure it out a little bit differently.
I have a couple things too to add in. They mentioned, I think there are backstops in place in case that runs amok. They have to hold you accountable to your mission statement, but that mission statement's in place. So like they said, with the transparency, if they go against that, you can make that public with a report or a story, a news piece, as well as your board of directors BD, if you want it, the minimum. So 3 people you trust in the community do us methods at our nonprofit. As long as, I think I'm cutting in and out.
A little
bit.
A little.
Sorry. So, you don't want to stack it with ringers, because you do want to enable critical and thoughtful journalism, but
Absolutely.
3 people who will uphold that, and then you just have to work with them to do that on a consistent basis.
Daniel Cusin has a question real quick. Daniel?
Yes, thanks, Lynn. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right, excellent. First and foremost, thanks for everyone. I'm really enjoying this and hearing everyone's story. Just a little background. I worked as the executive editor for 2 community papers called the Sentinel Newspapers, located in the DMV in Maryland, Prince George's County, and Montgomery. And, the pandemic didn't do any favors to those organizations, and they toppled. So basically what I wanted to do was try to start, I have a sports background, and I started a website, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to navigate it, because this is really something that I want to do to bring up young journalists, like high school journalists, and from some colleges that might not be, you know, your University of Maryland's, Philip Merrill, give them the opportunities with some real world experience. We maintained a lot of the people from the organizations prior, and I'm extremely new to this, but my goal is to continue the movement, continue the community journalism, because there really isn't any now. You have the Washington Post, of course, but there's a lot of niche markets that they're just not going to hit. So my question really is how difficult it would be to find grants for something unique, like a sports website, where you're actually putting more forth the effort of philanthropy than really dollar signs. And I don't really know the ins and outs. Would it be just crowdfunding, or I don't have any advertisers. I don't have an ad manager or anything. So I'm really trying to find the best way to do the right thing for the cause and for it to keep moving forward, making enough profit to keep the website going.
I have one suggestion. If you go to the Institute for Nonprofit News, there are 280 members there, and they're all linked. And I think, Daniel, there's some of those that are very similar to what you're trying to do. And in fact, real close to you in the Mid-Atlantic region, there's 2 or 3 in Baltimore, and there's 1 or 2 others in that region.
Right.
You know, I connected with a lot of those, and just like we're doing right now, we're all very, very happy to share our story. But there's 280 case studies right there you can start exploring.
Okay.
Yeah.
As far as like monetization and grants and receiving money for donations and stuff like that, does that conflict, or would it be something similar to like Catherine was speaking of having like an LLC separated from like a nonprofit? Again, I'm kind of worrying this, so excuse me if I don't know the proper terms for each, you know, situation.
You need some kind of business structure.
Right.
You're right.
Well, yeah, I mean, either LLC or sole proprietorship, or, you know, what I'm saying is mainly if it should be a nonprofit or not, because advertising,
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry if I missed it because I can barely hear you. But are you primarily what's your format? Are you online or are you in a paper?
Online currently. Again,
online.
Yeah.
Google has multiple grants for anybody who is trying to niche online.
Okay.
Have you tapped into that?
No, again,
I recently got a Google grant. Yeah.
Yeah, we did too.
They're very interested in, especially, you know, trying to aggregate certain niches online. I would direct you to Google Grants, and I can send that to you, which is a place to start.
Okay.
I mean, it's pretty easy. Now, I think they might be, you know, they just awarded their grants for this year, but they're going to be entering new ones for 2021.
Okay.
I think a few things to know about industry grants for nonprofits are the funding isn't immediate. There's usually
you're cutting out again.
You're breaking up again.
You're awarded the funding for a little while for a lot of them. So you got to plan for it. I mean, obviously you should go for everything you think can help you excel in the future, but you just have to plan for that. And also, a lot of grants we applied for are looking for underprivileged areas. That's kind of a focus of their grants. And we are not starting in that. So we're building programs to go there because we want to. I'm sorry if I'm cutting it out again. But so to keep that in mind, you just kind of have to build a program that the grants, you have to find grantors that are funding your type of project, which might take some research.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you for that.
May I come in here? This is Daniel. This is Tondra Rush. I'm NNA's general counsel.
Hi, Tonka.
And I am right in your backyard. I'm in Falls Church, and I would be delighted to help you sort through the legal structure questions.
Wow, thank you so much for that.
I'm not licensed in Maryland, but I'm licensed in Virginia, and it's not that different.
I'm sending his email to you right now, Tonda.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I do appreciate that.
Terry, did you have a question? Is Terry still on? Terry Saylor?
Don't see her.
She did. She's just said, oh, she said, never mind. She said, you structure your bylaws to define the role of the board so they don't control the content of your newspaper.
Yeah, you can. We did that with our bylaws, but that doesn't control human nature.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Well, but what you do is the bylaws are one thing, but the charter is the real question.
Right.
The charter is the thing that IRS wants to look at.
Yeah.
And if you get a board that's looking, Becky, this is really kind of for you guys. If you get a board that's looking basically for their own personal enrichment, then you run afoul of IRS's private enrollment rules. And so you can easily kick them out because they're violating the C3 rules. That doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have a whole bunch of people in the community that come get themselves elected and kick you out. I suppose that could happen, but you know, they don't have anyone to run the paper then.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a question, and this might be a silly question, but so transitioning from a for-profit company to a nonprofit, so obviously you still got to have publishers and editors, and they still have to get paid. How does that work? Is you're just like every other employee, that just the pay scale is set by the board?
No, in our case, the board doesn't set it. I do. We work as a separate entity. I don't have to have board approval on how I run the operation.
We're very similar. I operate as, I'm the publisher, and I basically / CEO. So the board has high level fiscal oversight because they have fiduciary responsibilities. So they look at my annual budget and give me tacit approval of that. But throughout the year, I can maneuver as conditions may be. I have the only hiring and firing powers in the organization. So, we operate that way. There was another part to your question I wanted to respond to, but I forgot it, so I'll let that go.
What about you, Joe?
Yeah, same thing. We actually, we're so new. We haven't had a board meeting yet. That's October 20th. And they'll approve our bylaws hopefully at that meeting. And in the bylaws, it says that I am the director and publisher of the company. And they decide my salary and my raises going forward, if hopefully, and the employees of the company.
My board likes me because I took my salary down. So they're during the pandemic. So I think it's all about relationship. If you enter in an agreement that the understanding is they hired the right person to run the company, then they're pretty hands off. I have not, had any board member, say you have to do it this way or you have to do it that way. I think that there might be some meaningful conversation or debate about things, but at the end of the day, they hire you to do the job, and it's usually pretty easy from there.
Yeah. I think, the more important document, at least in our case, is, the bylaws, a lot of that can be very boilerplate, but you want it to be specific to your mission, of course. But our 501c3 filing, the IRS Form 1023, there's a lot more text in there. It even outlines the projects and programs that the nonprofit's going to fund and sponsor and promote in the community. There's a lot of detail, and those when the community wants to know, what am I supporting? What are you asking me to contribute to? that's the document we're sharing, because it's just you know, it's more than it's a business plan, but it's also you know, a vision statement as well. You know, with
Right.
nuts and bolts and numbers attached to it. We put a lot of time into that 1023 filing, which is why my legal costs were so expensive. But I would refer, if anyone's considering filing a nonprofit status for a news organization, I cribbed off of the Salt Lake Tribune's filing that they filed. I have a copy of that. I have a copy of mine. You know, the Salt Lake Tribune was a test case for the IRS.
Yes, they were.
Can a newspaper convert to nonprofit status, 501c3, and still sell commercial advertising at a for-profit? The IRS said yes, you can, and that was a first case ruling. So that, you know, that was a big green light and a big path for us to be able to do that.
I have a question concerning the commercial side, the LLC. This is obviously a little bit more towards Catherine. Was there an education process with the community, or was there any pushback from the community, knowing that, you know, you had kind of the journalism side, obviously being on a nonprofit, but you were still in a profit with your with the LLC. You were still, you know, making a profit there. Was there any education or anything with that to the community?
I have to tell you, there was limited confusion. You know, we announced that we were now owned by a nonprofit, but there was no pushback. There was like, okay, what does this mean? And I think the community quickly understood that it meant better journalism. You know, so again, we don't like to talk about ourselves, but we did. You know, we said, we're doing this so we can absolutely give you the best journalism in our community. And so it was pretty easy. You know, they got it. But I think this community is unique. With any deep-rooted community, and I was a publisher in New England, and those papers were very deep-rooted, is they kind of get it. They understand that we're the watchdog, that we're going to work in their best interest. And so there's no convincing, right? And so, no, I think it was embraced very easily. And the donations keep coming. You know, I was very surprised. Somebody renewed a subscription yesterday for $142 for 2 years and added $100 for donation and say, keep it up, right? So I think the people who understand the importance of our role really get it. But again, we had to tell everybody, we don't do that well. We don't like being the story, but we did it. We told everybody our challenges. We told everybody what we wanted to accomplish, and they understood it. So I think as long as you clarify what you're doing, that this is not, we're not making, you know, we made it very clear, we're not here to make profit. We're here to just kind of put a good paper out and net neutral, and we're not trying to do, you know, back in the days when we were 40-50% profitable, those days are long gone. And that, I think they understand it. Yeah, just make sure the story is clear and transparent.
What I remind people is around here that even churches have bingo games.
I didn't hear that, Rollie. What did you say?
Even churches have bingo games. What's that got to do with religion? You know, so I mean, it's just, you know, telling the story, but you have to change the story. You have to tell the story that we're a community institution. You know, I mean, you have to really hammer that we're part of the public trust. And that's a big change. I'm not in sales. I'm a news guy for 46 years. If I had to sell, I'd be starving. But you know, I've never asked for anything for myself. You know, out on the street. But now I do. You know, and I got past. I got past that because I'm not asking, you know, even though it might keep my job going, that's not what it's about. It's about keeping the community institution open and supporting local journalism. So I can say that with a lot of confidence, and I tirelessly do that now, where I used to just go around and take my lumps from the, you know, the last angry reader or the advertiser that told us no 7 times in a row and complains we didn't print his press release. Well, now we have a long conversation about that.
I want to add something. Is when people ask me the difference, like how are you operating? Why is Piedmont Media LLC working as a commercial entity? I'd say take a look at the Salvation Army. You know, they are a nonprofit, but they have a commercial retail division where they sell clothes. You know, there are different aspects, and when they say, "Oh, I get that," you know, it's like there still is money coming in from different than donations, and so they said, "Oh, now I totally understand it," kinda, sorta.
Okay, everyone, this will end abruptly. They will cut us off. So you really have about 5 minutes if you have anything to ask or you guys want to finish up. It's been a great session. Thank you all.
Yeah, I appreciate meeting Joe and Catherine and everyone else.
Yeah.
I'm easy to find at sonomawest.com, and I'm very open to all kinds of conversations, especially the Clarks down at the south of California.
Yeah, we've connected with you before, Rollie.
Yeah. You should talk to
Ralph.
Ralph.
I really want to help you all out if I can.
Well, yeah. I do too, because we're, you know, Jack's getting up there and he's getting tired of this.
Well, he needs somebody to talk to about this, right? It's complicated, and you know, we're in a survival mode, right? So feel free to reach out to me at any time, and I always tell that to any of my colleagues. We are so like-minded, and we're in it for the right reasons. You know, I've been doing this for 43 years. It's about saving community journalism.
If y'all need to connect, you can go to, you know, your the convention site, and at the top it says people.
Oh, good.
And search attendees and send messages, and they'll get an email, and you can connect that way if you want to. Within convention. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. That was great.
Everyone.
Thank you all. It's Friday night.
Woo! Woo! Hey, if anybody wants to play bingo, there's some cash prizes. Kindle at 6 o'clock. We'll see y'all then. Thank you,
everybody. Have a good evening and a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.